Hello, everybody, and welcome back to AACRAO's Credential Chats. We are joined this week by Hilary Gibson. Hilary is the lead instructional designer for micro-credentials at Marshall University. Really excited, Hilary, to be with somebody who's a dedicated TE to micro-credentials.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Absolutely. And, just sort of to dive in with you specific to your role and micro credentials, it sounds, before we were getting started, Hillary, you were describing just the state of things at Marshall. And one of my high level takeaways is just around the consistency that y'all have like clarity on what is a micro credential at Marshall University.
Yeah, so we learned that lesson early on that we need to be specific of what a micro-credential is, just because it's pretty ambiguous is what that definition was when we started 2 years ago talking about micro-credentials at Marshall. And so we want them to be short form courses. They could be, right now we're in the non-credit space. So looking at specialized trainings specific to needs in the area, partnering with industries and regional businesses. So any micro credential that needs to be proposed here, we have a pretty clear set of, you have to have that external partner who's going to help share your micro credential and have that audience, as versus the build it and we hope that they will show up. And so we want to have that built-in audience and a definite learner for what this micro credential will be, who this micro credential will be offered to.
I think that a lot of people are starting to realize that that is a really healthy strategy to know that there's actually demand for the supply we're creating. And speaking of just the intentionality, you, Marshall, are part of the LER Accelerator cohort, which, for anybody who does not know, we can add a link in the show notes. But the LER Accelerator is a planning year grant where a little less than, I think, 2 dozen grantees. It was highly competitive. Were selected to have a planning year to be part of a cohort with consulting supports to figure out at the end of the year where they want to go with an LER, a learning and employment record. And Hilary, can you just describe a little bit about how you're getting started at Marshall University with your planning year on that LER Accelerator initiative?
Absolutely. So, like I said, we are just non-credit right now. And so we wanted to start there to kind of figure out what the building process is going to look like. We can move a lot faster, not having to go through the approval process for curriculum that would be for credit. And so we were just able to create some specialized trainings. I will do a little shout out for our durable skills trainings. It was one of the things that we heard from our business partners that they needed those durable skills that are not the specialized job training, but are like communication skills and diplomacy and professionalism. And so we had these built and we're excited to share them out, but we were able to move pretty quickly on building those and sharing them because they were non-credit. So we were trying to think about what it would look like to go from credit to non-credit and how we could seamlessly and easily do that for our learners. Right now, that process is not seamless or easy. There's a lot of barriers, there's a lot of hiccups, there's a lot of offices to work with. And so our planning year is to kind of figure out what is the process right now, and then how can we streamline that and how can we put like connect dots together to make it an easy transition for people coming back to Marshall after having stopped out maybe, or for new transfer students or adult learners or whomever, how can we make that credit for prior learning process easier? I mean, there's got to be a way to make it easier.
Right, and what I hear you say is that, how do we serve learners as we go, back and forth from non-credit to credit, um, while doing so without circumventing governance, right? That it's
Right.
like, how do we do this in a way that is still going to be meaningful and still, accurate and reliable and verifiable? And so,
Mhm.
as you get started, what does that look like? And do you kind of start with just stakeholder engagement? What's the process look like for you?
Yeah, so it's been a lot of figuring out current processes. And so right now, like you said, this is a planning grant. So we're going stage by stage by stage. The current stage that we are in is really talking to individuals on campus about what their role is in the current process. So our team has scheduled individual meetings across campus with people in the bursar, in admissions, in career services, in um, uh, there's a whole lot of other ones. My mind is blinking at the moment, but going through all of these different offices that are part of the process and asking, like, what is your current sequence of events? Like, who do you send them on to next? Who do you talk with? How did this get started? When was the last time this process was updated? And just asking all of these questions to gather information so we can come back to our team and figure out, okay, where can we connect dots, or how can we combine some stages, or what's a better order of stages to make it more efficient and, again, more easy for our learners coming back into the Marshall system.
As you talk about these, these just all these disparate offices that are all working for the same learners, right? We all have the same name on the top
Yeah.
left-hand corner of our paychecks. And I imagine, for a lot of folks in your world who are working in the online education space and well, I guess you're both online and in person, but a lot of this non-credit and professional and continuing education space, that some of these processes, that there's not a one-page infographic at a lot of our institutions.
Hmm.
And so these are processes that it's like if you know, you know. And
Right.
there's a handful of individual experts, but not necessarily institutional kind of broad understanding of how these systems work. So independent of this LER work, are there just lots of light bulbs and ahas and connections being made as you're having these conversations?
Yes. And another thing to your point is that not everyone's starting at the same spot. Like, we might have people who are trying to use work experience. And is that a way that we can give credit? Um, is there a way to take current existing classes and maybe break them up into smaller one credit micro credentials to then stack into a course? And so, like, we're taking already existing curriculum, but then building it into a place that could have more flexible start dates so that we're not adhering to that traditional semester start. We're also looking at what about these trainings that we've already built, like our durables or any other micro credential that we have on our catalog. How can we include those into some curriculum so that those students or community members who take those courses now can benefit and get some kind of credit hours for those? And so there's also different starting points for each learner coming in, which is why it's a challenging process, because it's almost a case by case basis for anyone coming in, either with credit or with non-credit or with work experience. And then how do you translate that? So really a lot of light bulbs going off of just, what are we doing now? And, like, oh, that's how that part of the system works. Okay, so now we know this. Let's connect it to what they're doing with the registrar. And then, like, is there any crosswalk or any, like, content mapping that we can do that matches, like, this credit matches something, learning outcomes that are already existent in a degree program? So, like, it's a lot of just zooming out and taking a look at the big picture, and then we'll get into the micro stuff as well. But it it is a bigger undertaking than I thought, like, than I was ready for.
I just have to imagine that some of the understanding, not just what processes are, but how the processes work and why they work, that there's just a lot of mutual sort of like relationship building that's happening, where these silos on our campuses are better understand each other, and that probably not just with micro credentials, but all sorts of processes that we liaise with one another on could maybe be smoother and more positive, more productive moving forward. I'm
Hmm.
also wondering, as you're learning in some of these conversations, especially with the LER word, learning and
Yeah.
employment record, if you're having opportunities for some of these folks who are in these stakeholder conversations to come away with new understanding and light bulbs where they're like, oh, that's the stuff my association is talking about. Why are they making it so complicated? Because I can tell you that we have data at AACRAO that, we have a whole report called Credential Confusion because
Hmm.
we're not doing a great job of explaining it. And so, are you finding ways well, not just art first, are you finding people saying, oh, I kind of sort of get these highlight real things you're talking about? And hand in hand with that, are you finding ways of talking about it that help that understanding happen?
Definitely. And one of the early lessons that we're learning and trying to focus on is the skills that are in these micro credentials. And so, kind of focusing on skills mastered and really having a solid terminology with that to, again, do that mapping to what is already existent or not already existent, but like what kind of credits can be offered with the skills mastered from micro credentials. Uh, is one that I've kind of learned is that the importance of correctly tagging our micro credentials, like what learning outcomes and what skills are associated with this, is going to make our life a lot easier when we do get to a place where we can convert those or stack those into something that can be offered for credit. And so I think that's, for me, that's been an important takeaway as we're constantly adding in new micro credentials. I want to be intentional about how we tag them with skills and with learning outcomes and how that data can be used to be effective and helpful when this PLA process starts.
Mm. And so, and just to make sure that I'm understanding you, Hillary, and I'm hearing that. So, for example, you mentioned durable skills, which for anybody who doesn't know that, that's a capital D, capital S, durable skills. There's
Yes.
several. I'm imagining you maybe are using the America Succeeds CompTIA framework, or the one that the Education Design Lab uses for it, where you have this external set of definitions of this is what these are, this is what the outcome is. So it's not this blurry, fuzzy thing, but a very concrete thing of here's
Mm-hmm.
what the credential is credentialing, that is measurable, and like that it's actually being assessed. I know, like, am I right that
Right.
those are kind of three things in your that make your process consistent? That we know what the skill is, we're saying
Mm-hmm.
it transparently, it's measurable, and it's we're assessing it.
Yes, absolutely. With the ones that we came up with, we have a list of 10, but like you said, we did a crosswalk actually of EDL and AACNU and some ones that we just asked business partners, hey, what are some skills that you need? And so between those crosswalks, we came up with our list of 10. And yes, so it's a clearly defined skill, clearly defined competencies and learning outcomes in that micro credential. And then we created our team did a phenomenal job with these courses, created a case study at the end of how to apply all of those competencies to assess whether or not this skill was mastered for our first level durable skills course. And so by having those clearly stated things at the beginning of the course build and then in data at the end, we are able to say on our digital badges, this is the skill, this is the competency, this is what was done to earn it. And so that in turn will help us if we can get them to stack into some kind of credit bearing thing.
And I have one last question. Sorry if
Yeah.
this is just way too out there and you're just like, nope. But as you talk about crosswalking, not just to these, professional continuing education programs, but also thinking about your undergraduate and some of our for-credit offerings where some of these same things, when you crosswalk, might probably already be embedded. And so as you're having these one-on-one conversations around
Mhm.
campus, have you had folks who around campus who say, could that work for our students? Is this something that, as we talk about, highlighting and showcasing the value of post-secondary attainment,
Mhm.
stuff that we can use to tell the story with official, Marshall University records for the durable skills that exist in some of these courses that we already offer?
Yes, we showed them. I mean, we're very proud of them, obviously. So we showed them off to everyone when they first launched last fall, early January this year, um, and have really talked to a lot of faculty about, hey, do you think this is something that you could embed in your current curriculum? And maybe that's a way that we can give credit for it by embedding that micro credential into an already existing course. But so all of them are offered for free to our staff and students at Marshall. And so we're really trying to get like garner interest and get students to enroll and get excited about these durable skills because it's that not super explicitly taught in undergrad, but they're very important skills to have. But back to your question, in an ideal world, we would love for those to be incorporated as part of like a gen ed requirement or as something that's embedded into currently existing courses and have that be an easy stepping stone into this non-credit to credit process. And so we really were trying to be intentional with how we present them to Marshall students and Marshall faculty of, this is a resource that's available to you. Like, let us kind of help you. And also we're helping the students with these very, I don't say undefinable skills, but the hard to master skills. Oh, I lost your audio.
I think that actually that is such a great point that you make, that these are hard to not just define, but sometimes to assess at scale reliably. And it sounds
Yes.
like y'all are just on the forefront of doing it. And I just have so many questions, especially that piece you mentioned about, the faculty and staff can be earning these. And is that sort of a, kind of secret sauce to start getting faculty and staff interested, and how might they also propose them? Conversation
Yes.
for another day. Hilary Gibson, thank you so much. Hilary is the lead instructional designer for Micro-Credentials at Marshall University. Really appreciate you taking the time to share with us on AACRAO's Credential Chats.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Hilary, and thank you for joining us, and have a badge-worthy week, everybody. So long.